Okay, we are live.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a call to order of the finance meeting. Today is February 6, 2025. The time is now 5:37 p.m. I am joining you from room 305 in 45 Lion Terrace. The rest of the team is joining us virtual due to the weather. I'm here just in case some of the public did not get the notice, and we want to be open and transparent with our people and have them have the ability to attend the meeting if they do show up. So we got all the bases covered. I don't have an agenda in front of me. Does somebody have an agenda in front of them? First item on the agenda is approval of minutes dated February 2nd, 2025. That I remembered.
So moved.
And I'll second. Any errors or omissions you'd like to point out, Mr. Medina?
None that I noticed.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is, does somebody have it in front of them? Could they please read it off to me? I'm a bit out of sorts.
I'm trying to get it in front of me also, sir.
Discussion and possible referral to the full board additional budget cuts, including but not limited to personnel, contracts, and programming.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I think Dr. Sack is going to step in for that one.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Can you project that on the screen, please, or if whatever document you're referring to, please?
No speakable content could be.
So we did have an opportunity to meet with the Instruction and Support Services Committee. And during that committee meeting, we had an opportunity to review some of the programs we've been using in district that we were able to reduce. And by reducing some or not renewing or eliminating going into next year, some of those programs and resources, we're able to come up with a total cost savings of $1.2 million. That was the gist of that particular part of the meeting. We had also discussed the three positions that were referred to the committee, and the Director of Athletics and Director of SCL and Student Services ended at the committee level, so that was not recommended to the full board. And the Executive Director of School Turnaround was tabled at the committee level for further discussion at the next committee meeting. Any questions? Mrs. Sokolovich, I think you're on mute. So I think.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 second, Mr. Medina. I had included a slide in the email from the meeting. It had the relay on top. Can we talk a little bit about that? The relay program is a 1.899 or something like that.
That was not discussed at that particular meeting, the Instructional Support Services Committee, but I do know that we are not going to be renewing Relay going into next year. Actually, that contract was actually ended this year, so that did give us a cost savings. I don't have that exact figure with me here.
Right. Can we get that before the next regular board meeting? And do we know, is that all cost savings through ESSER funds or operating budget?
This is total cost savings through, I believe it's a combination of both. I'm not particularly clear. I think some of it does come out of the ESSER funding, and some of it through the operating budget as well. I think, Marge, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I think Willie had his hand up first.
No,
Oh,
fine.
I thought you were clarifying something I was saying. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Hughes, please.
Yes, we talked about the costs at the last meeting. We looked at the savings that were in this year's operating costs that were not going to be, and they were true savings. The items that we were not going to renew, we did not include that as a quote unquote cost savings. And that would include the 1.8 relay costs. So there was a slide that came after the curriculum cost savings, and that relay would have been in that bucket of costs. That we really didn't look at that, even though we weren't going to be renewing it. We didn't look at that as a true cost savings per se.
Right, but yeah, what I'm looking for is basically the impact on any, say, I mean, do we know if we paid out the whole contract, or we stopped and we got some money that we recouped? And if the money could be recouped, this is probably more a Mr. Unquo question. And if the money can be recouped, being that some of it's ESSER, is it gone forever because we're past the expiration date, or can we utilize that for something else under the
That
law?
would be a Nestor call. I'm not sure where it stood with the payments.
Through the chair, whatever we paid out, we've already paid out. The only thing, any pending commitment, we have not paid them. We did not prepay them in advance. So that's where we stopped, pretty much.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and before the next regular board meeting, can I get the breakdown of exactly how much is operating costs and actually how much is ESSER? And for the ESSER portion, especially, if we could pivot and use that money for something else, or is it lost?
When you say ESSA, what do you mean? ESSA is all spent.
ESSER is all spent. We were told it's a combination of funds. We spent, let's say, for example, $2 million, 1 million from ESSER,
Mm-hmm.
1 million from operating costs.
Mm-hmm.
If there is $1.5 million left, that's not all operating costs. So there's 500,000 that may be attached to the ESSER funding, which has now expired. I would like to know if we lost any money on this deal from our ESSER funds, or if we do have some ESSER funds left from that, can it be used to purchase something else?
Again, whatever funds or whatever payments that we didn't make before the end of ESSER, we reprogrammed. We applied another expense to it to exhaust that expense. And that is one of the reasons why we did not use as much internal service fund as was projected earlier, because we charged some of those expenses to ESSER, thereby relieving us from not using much of the internal service fund as planned.
Understood.
Good.
But again, my question is, how much is the total savings to the operating budget? And was any ESSER funds used, whether through a journal entry or whatever have you, to pay for relay that cannot be recouped?
Okay, I'll dig into that and provide it to you.
Thank you. Mr. Medina, you still had a question?
I'm trying to get my mic on. Yep. Yeah, to that same thing, I just want to make sure that we continue to work in that same collaboration and understanding. When you say, Mr. Nuquo, that you'll get it to him, you'll get it to the committee.
Oh, yeah.
And to the board members. I just want to make sure, because words matter to me, as everybody knows by now. So I just wanted to make sure, because I would like to see that in, and again, and if I can share in layman's terms what we're looking for specifically, maybe, and this might help anybody in the room, is to find out, where does relay fall within the budget of the money, and what was spent and what wasn't spent and where did it come from? So it's like those deals that we can really see, what money, what true money we save, and what, for me personally is, what hill or what cliff we saved more on. Because I know this was something huge that was in excess of $7-8 million in the beginning when it first came. But is there any other things that it's going to be reported as far as savings that we're bringing forward today, or no? I see your hand, Traber.
So do I.
Besides the $1.2 million from the From the programs and resources that were being reduced, no, that was what we were sharing today.
Okay.
As well as the two positions.
Okay. They just said additional budget cuts, and I thought it was going to be something specific different then. Okay, thank you. No questions.
Yeah, that was me, just to leave it open in case we had something.
Chair, if I could make a request.
Yes, Mr. Unquo.
Please send it in writing to me so it will be very precise as to what you were precisely looking for, so there will not be any misunderstanding.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Traber?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I lost you all for a minute there because I was having trouble with the controls on this. And I had to log out and log back in. But my understanding from the meeting last week was that all the savings of the 1.214 million was from Alliance and ESSER ARP. But the relay learning 1.899 million was we did not get a clear answer on what I think you were getting at. So, and I missed part of this discussion. So if I'm repeating what somebody's already answered for you, I apologize. I know that we just stopped paying the bill this year, and we never have heard how much we stopped paying and where that money went. So that will be helpful on Monday to hear what we didn't pay of the 1.899 million. That's what the booklet that we were given at the ISS meeting said the relay contract was for 1.899 million, and that would be savings in the next year. But I know that we didn't pay. What I was told a while ago, months ago, was that we stopped paying that contract this year. So I don't know what that means in terms of savings this year.
Dr. Avery?
Yes, sir, Mr. Traber. We will provide that information to you. There was some actual expenditures at the beginning of the year to the middle of the year that was paid. When we initiated the stop payment on everything, there is some savings, and so what I'll do is that's one of the things when you fell off. Nestor said he was going to be able to provide those details to the board, and we'll get that to you before the meeting on Monday.
Okay. Last I heard was Dr. Saki saying I didn't know how much the money was for that, and then I came back in with Mr. Medina talking about the 8 or 9 million and then less, and so I had the packet from last week's meeting that said it was 1.899 million, and the exact amount for this year, I don't recall being discussed.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other board members? I know I've seen two other board members here. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't announce who's here. For the record.
Can you see them?
No, I saw them before.
Miss Casimir's
Medina was here. Miss Casimir was here.
She's here.
Mr. Woodson is here.
And Mr. Woodson is here. Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Woodson, do you have any questions? Hearing none, Ms. Casimir?
Yes, two quick questions. I wanted to follow up on the question that I had asked at the last board meeting. By the way, both of these questions have to do with finance. The first question I wanted to follow up with Dr. Avery. Dr. Avery, did you ever find out the particulars about that nonprofit organization that is registered under the state of Connecticut with some of the employees and a parent that is
Ms. Casimir, no disrespect, but that's not on that hasn't been listed on the agenda. I'd be glad to talk about that.
Oh, okay. All right,
But,
I'm sorry. So we'll wait. I'll wait until the next board meeting. That's fine. The other thing.
I'll be happy to add it to the next meeting as well if you like.
To the next finance committee meeting?
Yeah, if you like, so we can have a more thorough
Yes,
discussion
I
about
would
some of
like
these-
that. Thank you.
Could you email it to me, please?
Sure will. And
Thank
the
you.
other question that I have is, the internal service fund. Is there any way that we can get proof of how much money is actually in that fund? Like, I'm not talking about a spreadsheet. I'm talking about from an official, like, whatever the financial institution is that has that fund. That's my question. That's my last question.
Sure, we could, yeah.
Okay. And again, I want to repeat again, I'm not talking about a spreadsheet because those can always be, put in by a manually put in. I'm talking about the financial institution's stamp saying that this is how much money is in the internal service fund.
Through the chair, with all due respect, the internal service fund is basically what the auditors have recorded and is on the city books from the finance department is in the city.
Okay, so you could have that for me
Yep.
then by the next board meeting? Okay, thank you. That's it.
We'll double back to Mr. Woodson. I thought I might have heard something. Mr. Woodson, anything?
No questions now.
Thank you. Yeah, I got another question about the 1.2 in savings. Those are from various grants and such like that. But it will be reflected in the internal service fund because there's other items we can use those grants for, correct, Mr. Unquo?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That 1.2 million was from various grants, but it could still be reflected in the savings in the operating cost because we could shift to other services that we're providing within that same grant by legal journal entries, correct?
Yes, I believe so. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, all right, so are there any other questions on this agenda item?
Mr. Sakalovic,
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
I just wanted to note Mr. Benahan's here too.
Okay, Mr. Benahan. Mr. Benahan, we're discussing, do you have any questions? Do you know what we're discussing? The first item on the agenda is basically the budget cuts made at instruction and support services and the funding, where the funds were coming from, and if they could go to the operating costs and be a savings there.
At this moment, I have no question, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Anything I will email you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, if somebody could read that off for me, please.
Yes, sir. Next item is presentation and referral to the full board of the 5-year capital plan.
Thank you. Who's taking that away?
Mr. Nico is going to do that.
Sure. Do you have the capital? Basically, the capital budget is what I consider or what the city, because all capital requests, Board of Education requests, as well as all city departments go to the budget office, is what they consider a wish list. When they finish compiling it, it's about $180 million or $200 million in those 5 years. Then OPM will basically start streamlining them. I looked through Board of Education capital requests. It's about 200 and something pages, 300 pages, but they broke it down by projects. They're mainly asbestos removal, 50,000, 75,000, floor replacement, ceiling, bathrooms. So it totals about $18 million in various asks from the district to the city. So the city will screen through it. One thing I can tell you, the council is no longer funding or bonding $50,000 projects, because to them, it's not financially prudent to fund a $50,000 project and pay the interest on it or amortize the interest over 20 years. So they try as much as they can not to fund all those small projects for 20 years. That's why the city is giving Board of Education $150,000 every year from the city operating budget, earmarked for Board of Education for those small items, like replacing asbestos removal, 30,000, 50,000. So when I was the OPM director, when Board of Education has projects like that, $50,000, $40,000, we try to pay them out of the city budget, city operating budget. The 150,000 is specifically earmarked for Board of Education building maintenance. So relative to Board of Ed capital, it's lots of papers, lots of pages. Again, you can scroll through them. There's nothing really big in there, but they add up to quite some money. The new school is not in the, whatever. If the board is going to decide to consolidate, or there's no new school there. Let me just put it that way. So it's all, so facilities did not request for a new school in the capital. The 18 million is strictly small, minor operational maintenance. Any other question?
Let me take over board members first. I'm trying to see the packet. Is this included in our packet, the capital plan?
Yeah, I'm sure it's been uploaded into your portal, to the board portal. If, let's find out from Olivia, because it's pretty large. So it could not be uploaded in one file. It's more than 200 and something pages. So it probably got uploaded in different batches.
Does anybody have any questions? Well, let's try to bring that up. And now this, I just want to be clear to the committee, to the board, to whoever's watching. The capital plan, the 5-year capital plan is a wish list, but it is the board's wish list to approve or not approve. We used, on a 5-year capital plan we had in the past school, we saw what happened when the board slips on the duty. Now, we approved, as a board, we voted on and approved the capital plan up until ESSER. I missed it one year myself as finance chair, but just because we fell off track in the past does not mean we should not get back on track. As a board, over the last year or 2 years, we've seen what happens when we don't pay attention to budgets and when things go without us. And we need to get back on track. We need to make sure we approve the capital budget, that we see it, because we want to make sure that everything is being done in an equitable manner. I mean, we have schools that under the last capital plan skipped over other schools and getting like a second crack of renovation before a first crack. If had we seen that, we may have been able to discuss it and say, no, we want to push this first instead of push that first. So if we could get, I can't see the portal right now, if it's not in the portal, but I would like us to have the data for the next regular board meeting to actually approve the capital plan, because that is in fact part of our duties to approve budgets, and the capital plan is a big portion of our budget, whether it's coming out of our operating costs or not. It's expends city taxpayer funds, and we need to make sure the priorities on that capital plan are our priorities and reflect the priorities of the city and this board. Any questions? Any other questions? Mr. Traber?
Yeah, as I understand it, having somewhat been through this once, it's a 5-year plan that we change 1 year every year.
Sorry, Chief. When he's done, I might clear it up. You done, could clear it up, sorry, Chair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The capital plan is called 5-year capital plan. However, those 5 years are wish list. The only thing that's valid in your 5-year capital plan is the first year that the council approves, meaning whatever they approved in this fiscal year, 2025, if you did not, or you do not request another 5-year capital plan next year, you get a 0. It's only good for 1 year because it's a plan. They don't know if you're going to change your mind. They don't know if you're going to change your strategy. You have to reaffirm your request again every year of your 5-year plan and indicate whether there's a project you want to delay or there's a project you want to bring sooner. So that's what it's called a plan, is a wish.
The next upcoming year, Mr. Nicole, if I'm understanding you correctly. Right. So that's what Mr. Sokolovic was just saying, is looking at the next year's proposed list of projects. That's what we affirm.
No.
On our 5 years of plans, we just reaffirm that next year's list are what we're proposing.
No, let me throw it here. Again, the board has to prioritize their projects over the 5 coming years. Basically, the best way to do it, if you know what is your priority, you put it on the first year. If you know what's on your wish, or what is on your wish list for down the road, you can still include it there. That doesn't mean it's going to be honored, but it's just to put it on the red light, or that for you to remember next year that you had asked for this project. Do you want to continue with it? If you don't want to continue with it, then you take it out. You can have a replacement. So you're going to have to request, the board has to approve the whole 5-year capital plan as a request to the city. Then the city or the council is only going to ratify that 1 year. The first year they ratify is what is valid. Then they're going to streamline some of the projects in the outer years. But those projects they streamline in the outer years, if you don't request them again, the city doesn't have to indicate it again. Because the reason why the city has to streamline it for the next 5 years, the rating agency wants to see the city's 5-year capital plan. That's the only reason why they do it. But it's a wish list, because the rating agency needs to see it and make sure that the city is not having a plan that's beyond their financial capacity of bonding, or that they're not swallowing too much debt in the next 5 years. How are they going to pay it? The question the agency is going to say, you're planning on borrowing $500 million or $200 million, $300 million. What are your increase in revenues to finance those monies? So what we do, we streamline it or reduce it to a reasonable number based on what we really need, critical things we really need or we deem we need for those 5 years. That way the rating agency doesn't say you're going out planning on, because if you put it in your plan, it means you have every intention to. That's what they're going to assume. So you don't, the department requests 150, 180 million, everybody, Board of Ed, the city, everybody. The council scales it down. What the council will approve in those 5 years is about $60 million. And those are vetted plans.
But I guess what I'm trying to put it in a layperson's terms, that I sat through Mr. Garcia's presentation last year to the council of the capital plan, and I saw what you're talking about. It was a 5-year plan, and there were projects that he talked about and moved around and shuffled around, and different things that were put back in back years versus more immediate needs. And he explained them in terms of their priorities, etc. And what I'm trying to get to then is, there are the projects that are listed that we need to deal with this year. There are projects that we're not going to deal with for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years. All of which is now going to be affected by the facilities report that we're about to get.
That is correct.
So we're about to give the city our normal 5-year capital plan. And we adjust that and tweak that, and depending on the normal sort of things that we're looking at and the market and whatever other things come into play, as we adjust it each year. This year, it's going to be dramatically adjusted by something we haven't done in 15 years. Which is a facilities review.
That's correct.
Which is also going to be colored by the demographic study. So we're going to submit this 5-year capital plan that we'll look at Monday night.
All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Traver, point of information real quick, because this plan has already been submitted without us.
The board can amend it. It's just a request.
So it is sitting in the city hall right now without us even looking at it. That's the point I've been trying to make. I'm sorry. I just thought that was important to point out.
Okay, because last year I watched Mr. Garcia submit it, present it, and it was submitted without being presented to the full board. This year, I guess it's already just been submitted, but I see it in our packet. It's just I can't look at it in any coherent way on my phone or on this tablet without while talking to you. It's all going to be it's been submitted, and then we're going to take a look at what we learned from the facilities, and everything's going to change. Is I guess what I want to make sure I understand correctly.
Right, through the chair. Again, the way I did speak to George Garcia, he basically indicated it's all contingent upon what the board wants to do. So he cannot make that decision without getting the facilities master plan. So he had to meet the deadline of what he deems that he needs to maintain the school until the board decides what to do. The city is not funding them. To be honest with you, the very thing that has a meaning is what the city will fund in 2026. They will still show the plan or scale down the plans for the remaining 4 years, but what matters is what the city will honor for 2026. And the city will only honor things like pose hazard, electrical hazard or whatever to the students in the immediate need. Let me put it that way. That's all the city is going to fund. The city, I don't want to put it that way, they have their hands tied with bonding capacity. So
I understand. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Medina, did you have questions? I should have went to you first.
No,
Yeah.
I did not. I'm good.
Mr.
I'm just
Benahan?
looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question, but I have a comment to Mr. Nexter. I agree what you said about we have to let them know the city before everything, we don't receive or we don't approve it. But just to say this, Mr. Nexter, you working with us and everything, just be sure you let us know. So us, the board member, we can do the process with Dr. Avery, because I know together we can make the difference, with a good communication. I know it's a lot of things we're going through, and it's a lot of things we have to talk and discuss and everything. So just be sure, when that moment comes, just let us know so we can do our job. I know you're the perfect one in that part. So I just want to do that for the comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Again, through the chair, honestly, I did ask George. He said he had never submitted the capital to the board, that he usually submits it to the superintendent. And how would I know what happened in the past before George's time? And he didn't know what happened in the past. That's what he told me. It's not a problem. I mean, now that we know, we just submit the capital to the board for their blessing.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No more questions, comments.
Ms. Casimir, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Woodson, any questions?
No questions at this time.
Okay, and I got a question and comment and a request for Dr. Avery for this committee's needs. I put this original agenda item for the capital request in prior to the January 28th meeting, so it was known well ahead of time that this was going to be an agenda item. We got over 100 print page document dump 45 minutes before the meeting started, and we as a board, we're under state scrutiny. We as a board need information to look at in order to make good decisions. We need that information sooner rather than later, because I don't know about anybody else, but I can't read 100 pages in 45 minutes to have an intelligent discussion. And we need to be more cognizant and get the board the information they need to make their decisions, because when we don't have information to make their decisions, the state starts looking at us for a takeover. And I, for one, want to do my due diligence and not let the state take over. but I can't do that without the help of the superintendent and the superintendent's staff. Thank you. Mr. Medina. Is your hand up again, or?
Yes, thank you. Yes, my hand was up. And I'm sorry, I had received a call. But my question is, because Mr. Arnuko mentioned that we can make edits. Is there a time frame or a window when this thing needs to be, I guess, finalized with the city?
I mean, within 2 weeks, a week and a half is more than fine. All I have to do, I'll just tell the new OPM director that this is the amended capital budget request.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because he has to submit it, the mayor has to submit it to the council first week of March 1st or March 2nd, 1st or 2nd. So within a week and a half, within a week is fine. You just honestly, the best thing is to, scan through it or scroll through it and decide which projects. If you want to increase them, you can recommend they be increased. If you want to reduce them, you can recommend they be reduced. If you want to bring them forward, you can bring them forward. If you want to push them back to out a year, you can. But again, at the end of the day, to me, what is of importance is what you push in front, which is 2026. That's what matters.
Thank you. Any more on this item, anybody? Okay, so Dr. Aiden.
Yes, sir. I kind of wanted to address the concern that you raised. The last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of requests to come through the office. We've had a lot of, different, perspectives that we've had to kind of collect and go. So my apologies if you didn't get that in a timely manner. We also had issues uploading that particular docket because it's so large. So we apologize for that as well. But again, we will try to make sure that we are giving the board the most accurate information they can so that you can make a decision. So that's important for myself and my team. So moving forward, we'll make sure that we can get that for you in a timely manner and work from there. But I also would like the respect to be able to, my team makes recommendations in a way that we thoroughly, evaluate the things that we're going to make the recommendations on. So also being open-minded to those recommendations as well. So we appreciate the concern, and we will address that and make sure that we have the data that you need moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. That's much appreciated. It'll make everybody's job easier, and it'll be easier to take recommendations seriously when we have the data that back up those recommendations ahead of time, so we can have a thorough discussion on that. And and I hope going forward that we're able to keep up, because since January we've had 3 committee meetings. So if it's overwhelming now, I suggest we find a way to get the data in there as soon as possible, whatever exists. I mean, definitely need to get the work done. We're all on the same team here.
To be clear, it's not overwhelming. It's just really trying to make sure that we get clear, definitive, directions of what is wanted. Sometimes it's a little fuzzy. So then we interpret, then you guys interpret. So again, I think it's important that I think the written part of it, where you say we send it in written format, I think is the better way. And we've been doing a little bit. Everybody's been doing that a little bit better. So I think it's going to be. We have a good plan now moving forward. So we'll make it work.
Thank you. And I would entertain a motion to put the capital plan on the budget on the regular agenda, move to the full board for consideration to the regular agenda, even though it's already there, but we need to start going through this process sooner rather than later.
So moved.
Now second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the update of the 25-26 budget.
If
Correct?
I may, through the chair. Presentation of
Yeah.
preliminary 2026 fiscal year budget requests.
Right, and I want to preface this for Mr. Unquo, that this is not going to be 100% numbers exactly, because it is preliminary, but we do need a barometer of where we're going and what we're doing, so we can have a whole overall big picture. So these numbers are subject to change, and this is a preliminary draft form. So we quote, is that
It is.
accurately reflects?
Through the chair, it is, but putting a lot of time into it. It's to be very honest, it's as close as it can be.
At this point in time.
No, well, in general, I mean, unless the governor, it depends what it depends what the state does. It's as close as it can be based on the information we have at hand. Let me just put it.
Awesome, that's better than I thought. Thank you. Take it away, sir.
Okay. Olivia, well, I guess we're getting into budget, right? Or should we go on? What are we doing?
You need to share your screen.
Olivia, could you bring it up? I don't. Who has it? The IT department. Can you bring it up? I will go through it.
We do not have it, but if you have it, I could make you share it.
Okay, I gotta pull it up now. Let's see. Preliminary. There you go. Final. Make sure that's the right one. Updates. Okay, I'm on share. Can you see it? No.
Nope, not yet, sir.
Not yet, sir.
Tim, could you have Tim come down here, please? Sure. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we're still here, Nestor. We're just trying to get Tim.
Yeah.
He's coming, Tim.
Okay.
Nestor.
Did you need me to bring it up, just in case, Tim? Okay.
Yeah, you can
Yes.
bring it up. If you,
Yes,
you can
Sam.
share it, you have it, right? If you have it, that's fine. You just bring it for sharing.
Okay, one moment.
I think that was Jeff.
Yeah, that was Jeff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep, that was.
No, if you
problem.
have it, Jeff, bring it up here.
The guy, the IT guy.
Yeah, come on in. Okay, he's here. Let's see if we, Jeff, don't, let's see. All right.
So you want me to just save this and put this in the portal, or?
No, he want to put it so the board can see it.
Okay. You're
So
on.
that you share it so the board can
Sure.
see it with the board member, pretty much.
Sam, can you give Nestor presenter rights?
He does.
Okay, he does.
Okay.
This is being.
I see some changes. There it goes.
There it is.
Can you see it?
There
Okay.
is.
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Pretty much FY25 year-end projected amount. What I did here is basically try to kill two birds with one stone. In other words, show where we are or where we'll be at the end of this year, or the issues or problems will have, and where we will end at the end of this year. On the same note, I did the next year proposed budget. So they run very parallel to one another. So we're basically doing two budgets in one screen, if that's clear. So the headers you're going to be concerned with, it's current year budget, FY25 munis budget, which the board adopted, 242 million. Current year FY25 year-end projected expenses, and next year proposed budget projected expenses. Just for clarity, the current year-end projected expenses is gross. When I mean gross, I mean before the use or application of the internal service fund use and any other gap closing measures. So again, if the media is here, if the public is here, if anybody is looking at this spreadsheet, please do not go out and run and say that the district is projecting $42.5 million deficit. That is not true. For clarity, please. Neither can you go out there or assume and claim that the district is projecting almost $68 million deficit. Again, that is not true. These are gross numbers before the gap closing measures or reductions or actions that have been taken, both the ones approved by the board, both the ones Dr. Avery have implemented, and the ones that the board has not implemented or approved that have been brought up in for consideration. So again, the district does not have $42.4 million deficit this year. For clarity, the media, people at home, anybody listening, please. I just want people to go away with the right fact and reflect the right fact out there. Neither does the district have $67 or $68 million deficit this year. These numbers are gross number before applicable budget closing measures, which is very normal. Okay, with that in mind, these are some of the solutions or applicable solutions. One, we're going to use allowable alliance grant money to the tune of, $10 million this year, $7 million next year. The next one, under solution one, these are measures or gap closing measures for current year and for next year that have been vetted and validated and approved by the board. Well, to some degree, except number 6. What I mean by that, the amount of use of internal service fund. That's what I mean by that. But the monies are there for the internal service fund. This is part of the $26 million that the board adopted. So based on that, we're doing citywide operational account freeze, which was an attrition, which Dr. Avery committed that he would deliver, or by doing citywide operational account freeze, attrition, some savings by slowing down on hiring, except teachers, sped teachers, relevant subject teachers and needed teachers in general for the improvement of Bridge for Children or educational improvement of Bridge for Children. So education is the paramount goal, and this attrition or operational savings should not or is not intended to hold back not hiring teachers or running programs that will improve children's academic performance. This is not part of it. We are not doing that, just for clarity. Nutrition center, the district pays the retirees for nutrition center out of our active health insurance account, out of our health insurance account. So they will be reimbursing us. They do reimburse us every year for paying or fronting or paying for their retirees, people that worked under them. It's a very common thing. So this year, approximately $1 million. Next year, approximately $1 million. This one, that state reimbursement of health boiler. The city replaced a boiler, a chiller, in one of the schools. It's grant funded and is eligible for grant reimbursement. The reason why I put it here, the expense is already grossed up on the expenditure side. It was not budgeted this year, but we fronted the money. Because the way the grant works, you have to front money and get reimbursed. So we fronted the money, but for my own sake, I had to put it as a revenue here so I can keep an eye and make sure that we get reimbursed. Because if I net it against the expense, assuming it's going to get reimbursed, there's no way for me to keep track and make sure we get our money back. I'm not saying we're not, but this, for me, this is like, checking and making sure that every month or every 2 weeks, we follow it up and make sure we get our money back before the end of the year. So Board of Education approved gap closing measure. These are the net savings of what the board approved. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, if you recall. This is the net effect of what it will save in this current year, $2.1 million. Next year, the full savings is going to kick in, and that savings is 7.9 million, approximately 8 million. Again, when you do lay off, you have to factor in unemployment. So, I had to factor in unemployment deducted from the savings. So the net what you're seeing here is the net savings. And just for clarity, if somebody has in mind and say, I'm going to lay off, I'm going to save $2 million or $1 million in layoff, whatever the amount or whatever number you pick. If you pick $2 million, please bear in mind, depending on what time of the year, you're going to have to do about $2.3 million or $2.4 million in cuts in order to net $2 million, because there are other costs that you have to pay for the first 6-7 months, depending. I'm using 6 months. People can collect unemployment more than 6 months, but I figure 6 months is average. People can get a job within 3 months, within 2 months, again, but 6 months is pretty much average again. So, but that's what this 2.1 and 7.9 is. Use of internal service fund. Here, the goal here is to try to close this year gap as much as we can. You can't run a deficit. So we don't have a choice but to try to use 22 million of the internal service fund this year, use 7 million next year, leaving a balance of 5.4 million that we are not using, because that's about the minimum threshold the city will allow us in order not to run a deficit in the health insurance fund, in the internal service fund. So with all that, go ahead.
Mr. Crow, let me stop you for 1 second right there.
Mhm.
The city does not decide how the board expends its money. We've been under $2 million quite a few years. I just wanted to point that out. Not that it's an optimal thing to do, but we control our own funds. The city cannot tell us how to spend it. Now, it would be wise to go under a certain threshold, but we have been low as $2 million in the past. And sometimes, as you pointed out, sometimes we didn't even have an internal service fund. So I just want to make that clear. I'm sorry, continue.
Yes, sometimes you didn't, but you didn't know the auditors were writing it up when they do the audit. Yeah, they point it out when they do the audit. Mm-hmm. So,
and you can, yeah. All right.
But yeah, again, for me, it's prudent to have that in reserve, again, because, okay, based on that, you have almost $40 million, $79.8 million in gap close, verified, validated gap closing measures to be applied towards current year of $42 million projected shortfall, leaving you with a $2.6 million shortfall for this year. For next year, validated gap closing measures of $27.6 million, leaving you with a $40 million gap remaining gap for next year. However, let people not jump into conclusion. You have to be here to finish up with this spreadsheet before you can leave and start broadcasting what is not true. Please. There are additional gap closing measures that are pending. When we say pending, we mean these ideas being brought before the board. The board has to ratify it, agree with it, approve it. But again, bearing in mind we have $40 million pending gap or projected gap for 26, hard decisions need to be made. One of them, elimination of 2-to-1 kindergarten paras, which current year is funded. It was funded with ESSA money in the past, but ESSA money is no longer there, and we're still carrying it in our operating budget without funding source, if you really want to put it that way. So the proposal is to let this year go by and make it effective July 1 for full year. That will save you $1.3 million. The second one, number 2, elimination of 11 restorative practice positions that we again funded with ESSA funds and carried into current year budget. Again, the value of those positions is $1.37 million if you include all the benefits, the health insurance and the fringe benefits and MRF that's associated with them. Elimination of additional carryover positions, programs that were funded with ESSA funds. This is including positions and programs. This is where, Dr. Avery and I probably going to have to dig more. Well, the board actually, to be very honest with you, we could gain 300,000 or reduce them by 300,000 this year because some of the monies have been spent already. We're 6 months into the year. Some of the positions have been filled. So between that, you're looking at 300,000 net this year. Next year, whatever changes or cuts we make can balloon on a full year basis into 2.5 million. Again, if you're doing positions or trying to do position savings of 2.5 million next year, you're going to have to cut almost $3 million in positions, the value, in order to get this net number of 2.5. I just want to make it clear. Relative to overtime, mainly facilities have been running overtime in a high number. Yes, during ESSA, there were a lot of projects to be done in the district. ESSA was, those overtime were being charged to ESSA. Most of the overtime were being charged to ESSA. And the projects were many. I mean, they had a lot of money to spend and a lot of projects to do. But, the fact of the matter is ESSA is over. The projects are no longer there. They really have to scale down on their overtime. Current year is being projected to be almost $1.3 million. To me, that's a little high. We're going to have to scale it down by $300,000 next year. We start early. We've gone 6 months or 7 months into the year. I feel we can only save $100,000 this year. Then next year, it will be full blown of $350,000 target. We have to cut everywhere. So basically, the additional gap measures on the expenditure side, $400,000 this year, 5.5 next year, if the board approves these pending expenditure reductions. There's additional gap closing measure, which is basically alliance grants. The last number, this is actually, that's why I got distracted a little bit in this meeting, because news just came in, or an email just came into my inbox, and I started reading it. It's from the state of Connecticut. The original number they published in January was indicating we're going to get 10.7 million in alliance grants. The email that I just read that kind of distracted me. The governor is reducing it, is being reduced from 10.7 to 10.4, as the email just was written today, released from the state. So basically that 10.7 is going to change to 10.4. So But for the heck of it, let's just say 5.5 million plus 10 million, 10.7 would have given us $16.2 million in additional gap closing measures that the board has not approved. When you combine this 27 million and this 16 million, you will come up with 43, almost $44 million in gap closing measures for next year, and 40 million for this year. If you take away this 40 million out of the original $42 million gap, this is where you're going to end. You're going to end up at $2.2 million shortfall remaining gap to be closed this year. If you take away this approximately 44 million out of this 67 million or $68 million gross number, you're going to end up with remaining $24 million budget gap. All in all, you have $26 million gap between the two, or gap or shortfall to be closed between the 2 years. Then there's another third possible potential additional gap deficit measures or closing measures. No numbers are attached to them, but they're good ideas. They could be validated. The impact of facility studies as it relates to schools. That's a decision the board has to make. FY26 increase in Board of Education funding from the city of Bridgeport. That's something I don't know, we don't know. Potential additional state special education funding in FY26. This is where we get our legislators, how possible it is, but it's something worth putting on the table. I cannot quantify or guess. I don't know. Review and return some SPED students to the district, pretty much to cut down costs or save money, or try to do it in-house. So these solution 3 does not have dollar amounts associated with them. So all in all, if you look at line 171, that's where we stand today between the 2 years. Again, for people in public, for the media, this is where we are. We've come this far. That's not to say that board cannot take more actions to bring this down.
Thank you, Mr. Lupo.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Medina?
Thanks.
Mr. Medina?
I'm gonna pass for right now. I'm just writing some things down and everything. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Traver? You're on mute, sir.
Put it on mute. I'm not trying to argue with anybody. I just want to make sure I understand. The point you two were disagreeing on was, and agreeing on, was good practice would say we should be keeping about $5 million in our savings, internal savings fund. The fact of the matter is that if we went below that, the auditors are going to look askance at that. The reality is we've gone below that before, and that is a source of money if we needed to avoid cutting something else in the schools and balancing our budget, because obviously the bottom line is that our fiduciary responsibility is to balance the budget. Am I summarizing that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, I'm not suggesting we do anything. I'm not arguing one way or the other that what we should do. I just wanted to make sure I understood what the two of you were saying to each other.
Through the chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
again, the goal of the board, or my goal or my objective, is to stay away from one-time fix. Meaning one-time fix in the sense, if you exhaust your internal service fund, it doesn't replenish itself, doesn't replenish next year, doesn't replenish a year after. We're just creating a deeper, bigger hole, a bigger gap. So the best thing is to look for a permanent fix that will sustain and continue. I mean, I hate to use the word infinity, is into infinity, but again, to infinity or extended time than using a one-time revenue source, which will not reoccur next year.
I understand.
Thank you.
I understand that. We're kicking the can down the road. And I have another comment too. Just today, and I want to say this for the record, last year, we have been dealing for the last 3 months with and I heard you very clearly at the beginning. For anybody that watches this video, or is watching now or watches later this meeting, to be clear, this is, you are issuing your cautions as to not to misread this.
Yes.
Because just this morning, I heard the state commissioner again misrepresent that we passed the budget last year with a deficit. And you can't pass a budget with a deficit. We passed a budget that may have been irresponsible, but it did not have a deficit because we used the internal service fund to balance it. And so I just think that there is a false representation out there that we passed a budget that had a deficit when in fact we ignored your advice that you're talking about here and over relied on our internal service fund and kicked that can down the road. So the state commissioner is helping perpetrate this misrepresentation of Bridgeport's budget last year. So we need to be clear that our budget is now got a deficit, possible deficit at the end of the year, but that's because of other factors that occurred, not because of the budget that was passed in the summer or in the spring. But the last point I want to make is looking at your solutions at the end that are all speculative, I get. We are going to have to look at the facilities review, the money we'll get from the city, the special ed funding committee that's looking at special ed funding. You have left out the argument that's going to be had in the state legislature about the ECS spending. That's not settled either. So I would add that to your list as an item E under solutions.
Okay. Through the chair, when you say ECS spending or ECS allocation increase?
Allocation increase, yes, sir.
Okay.
Because that fight is going to occur, as to there is a push. We had our superintendent up with our mayor arguing that they should increase that $550 million and that half of that money should go to the 5 cities that were represented that day. That would mean a $50 million increase or more for our city. And so there is an argument and a push to see that money increased. And while I don't think we'll get all that money, I'm not suggesting that. The argument they made was correct. And I do believe that there is a feeling within the legislature and by the governor that there is some push. And we've seen some understanding up in Hartford that the guardrails need to be bent, and how much they get bent is what's going to be fought over the next few months. We obviously can't budget on the speculation of how much those guardrails are going to be bent. But we're going to have to put together a budget with the worst case scenario. But then we're going to be up in Hartford fighting to bend those guardrails as much as we can so that we don't have to live with that worst case scenario. So your item 3 here in your budget is the the possible potential additional gap deficit measures. And so I would just include that one in there because when Mayor Ganem and Superintendent Avery were up in Hartford with the mayors and superintendents from 4 other cities saying 550 million, that was a heck of a statement.
Through the chair, again, Dr. Avery, I know when I walked into the office, well, just some news or whatever information or email that was sent to you. I think the governor is proposing something in 2027. I don't know if it's special ed, increase in special ed reimbursement, or is it the ECS? One of them, everybody thought it's going to be 2026. I think it's kicking it down the road.
That's the ECS, and that's 2027. I saw that too.
Okay.
Yes. And you have that in there for 2027. And
no, for 26. I have it for 26. Big difference.
Well, no, there's the one we saw or we were given just a day or two ago. Just had a one-time. Oh no, you're right. It's 2026, and it's only for 1 year, and then it's flat funded the next year. But yes, and the proposal for sped improvements is that grossly insufficient. And so both of those things need to be increased. And that'll be our job up in Hartford, to be fighting for increases in all those areas, as will other cities be arguing for the same sort of thing, because it's an insult to all the cities and the distressed communities in our state.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, thank you for bringing that to light. We talked about that, recently, but I failed to bring that to Nestor's conversation piece this morning. So again, I appreciate the reminder on that. But that's going to be a huge, revenue opportunity if we can get a little bit more towards that. So I'm going to be monitoring that as well. And I know there's other superintendents as well we'll be keeping our eye on that and pushing for a little bit more of that too. So that could be a real good boost in revenue for the district.
Yes, sir.
Is that all, Mr. Trevor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Benahan.
Not question this moment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Casimir. Mr. Woodson.
No question at this time.
Mr. Medina.
Thank you. I think I'm losing my mind, but I want to make sure that I was getting.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, my data. I'm trying to find my pictures that I've saved over the time of being on the board. Because I see I'm trying to work multiple devices. I see the numbers, and if I'm right, the numbers to me, I just have memorized in my head 309. And nowhere in this presentation did I see a 300 number. So I'll start with that question. $309 million was the budget that was presented by the ex-superintendent, and that was voted by the board. And in your numbers, nowhere did I see 309. So I'm wondering, did I miss something?
Oh, I just have to add the SR amount, which is the same thing. Adding the SR amount, it does not change the magnitude of the problem. I could add $28 million or so to it, it will bring it up to that, but it still doesn't, because Alliance is actually Alliance, not SR, I'm sorry. Alliance money. Alliance is pretty much earmarked more for grants and educational. Where you should be concerned with is how much are you going to be spending over the operating budget. The Alliance money is already accounted for in the Alliance budget. The expenditures are already earmarked there. So you cannot spend this much money under the operating budget of 242 and run a shortfall. All the Alliance money are all spoken for with projects or funding different teachers and educational programs. I could just add back to Alliance budget of $28 million, and you come up to the 209. I just added to the 210, you're going to come up to 333. So I'll roll it up for you for the board so you can see it doesn't make any difference. So your problems.
I understand.
Your problems.
I understand it doesn't make. I understand it doesn't make a difference in the fact of the bottom line of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But for clarity,
mm-hmm.
for transparency, for the public, and even for I'm a board member. I'm going through all these pictures on my phone right now, and I'm trying to go and figure out all the things that were given to us before to figure out, where is he getting that data, that number, when I thought the budget that we passed was 309, and I know that to be true. So, again, when everybody's looking at these things, they got to compare the data that they receive to the data that we're receiving right now, and it just doesn't add up. So for transparency and for clarity, it should be always the same. No matter what happens, it always be the same. So the misrepresentation that I feel right now that's out is that the budget was 280. I'm trying to find out now the flyer that you just put, which is not the case. It was 309. So that's what I mean, that, I just need to see apples and apples together. And I think the public, again, needs to see that, and we all need to see it clearer. That way we can see the, and compare it. So again, to me, it was, 268 plus a $41 million that she was increasing gave us the $309 million. So again, from 268, she added $41 million to the 309 to be able to keep status quo.
That's how I will recap it before submitted before it goes to the full board.
Thank you. Greatly appreciated. That way we can just match everything. If it's going to help. It's going to help us advocate. It's going to help us when they ask us a question. Well, he said this number. Well, we can tell them, well, listen, this was the real number in the sense of that was done. And we just need to have that clear. For me, I need it. I need it clear. This is only my second year in the board, and I need to know these numbers. And when you take out some other information, then it makes the information that other people have pretty much have probably the same question that I have. Where is he getting this number from? Again, I have 268 added to that with $41 million for a total budget of 309.
That's not a
and
problem.
What it was equaling the fact that it was 267 and some change for operating, and then the grants were 34.5, if I have that number right also. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I look forward to reading that. That way I can compare everything and move forward. Thank you.
That's fine. That's not a problem.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Medina, thank you for bringing that to light. I think it's important that you, with this exercise, if you look at the agenda items were specifically about certain things. I know that last one was about the total budget or proposed budget. I think it's going to, I think I would recommend that you and Nestor, he gives you like a crash course in making sure that you're truly understanding, because we need you to advocate for the accuracy of things too, because it is, and that's one of the things I've been stressing. Budgetary things for any school district is complicated. It takes time. You have to be able to, really shift and focus and use grants and use, operating funds and use all these different ways to be able to kind of make sure it's clear. And so, this is Nestor's first time presenting the budget and analyzing and working and having his own mindset of how he presents it. And it's a delicate thing. And so I appreciate his willingness to really kind of focus in and help me have a better clear. We had this same exercise with cabinet this morning, Mr. Medina, and you should have seen their eyes about really understanding how and what those numbers are, because it's mind-boggling. So
it's challenging. It's challenging. But again, it is what it is. But Mr. Medina, it's not a problem. I will just gross it up, and I will gross up the budget and before it goes to the board.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
Yep, not a big deal. But I have to commend my staff. Patricia St. Louis, she's very instrumental, very intelligent lady. So I couldn't have pulled it off without her. So
absolutely, Nestor.
Right,
thank
Mr.
you both.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Avery. Mr. McCall, you still haven't gotten to me, and then you got to go to Rob again. Yeah, I want to help you out with the narrative. Definitely, the narrative is troublesome right now because I think part of the problem with the narrative is that over the last 3 years of ESSER funding, we did pretty darn good, and we're conserving our money. While we watched other districts last year laying off, they were doing what we're doing now. They already went through the exercise of layoffs and attrition and all that. So now the spotlight is on us because we're there. And part of the false narrative being pushed is that we both know deficit is an accounting term, which is actually kind of correct, but kind of incorrect. What we need to emphasize is we are not spending more of our liquid assets on our liabilities. We can cover our bills with our assets. We are not in any way, shape, or form going to be insolvent and bankrupt as a district. Worst case scenario with these two that you put, the two ISF reserve funds, we end this year balanced. We're absolutely going to end 24-25 with a balanced budget no matter what. Even if we don't make any more cuts, which I do not suggest in any way, shape, or form, we could shift that 2.6 million in ESSER funds and balance the budget this year, and then work on next year's budget as well. Not that it's optimal. I know. I'm telling you, I don't want to do that. But that's the narrative. We are not going to be an insolvent district. We are making the cuts that they made back in Hartford and they made in other districts over the past few years. We're making those now. The spotlight is on us now because while other people were doing those layoffs, we were hiring. And that's part of the narrative that we got to unwind, that the two are separate things. They have two separate things, the unwinding of the hiring, which needs to be done to save some money, and how we got to this point over time. So those are two different things. We had people coming out saying with the deficit that we don't know where all that money going. We spent it all on administrators, which is also not true. Those are false narratives being said. And the people putting out these false narratives, you've got to question their motives. Got to question the motives of the people putting out these false narratives. What do they want out of us? Do they want to cannibalize our whole district? If you're gonna look at us, hold us responsible for what we're responsible for. Tell us, hey, you guys did a good job. You guys got your children psychologists, social workers. You got them teachers. You got them tutors for an extra year than almost every other district in the state. Congratulations, guys. You did great. I'm sorry you're in trouble now because we're not funding you adequately. Had we funded you adequately, you would not be in this position. Had we funded you at the level Greenwich is at $26,000 per pupil, and the governor tells you, you wasted money at $18,000 per kid? No. Let's get the narrative where it belongs. The narrative should be on equity. The narrative should be on parity. All right, I'm going to jump off my soapbox, bring it down a notch, and bring it back to the budget. And I can't help myself sometimes. All right, now as far as the alliance funds and the ECS funds, what number did you say it was revised by?
Is down to 10.4 increase instead of 10.7.
So it's about 300,000. Okay, so
300,000.
300,000.
300,000, sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This always gets confusing to a lot of people, but the alliance grant is basically baked into the ECS, and it's usually pulled apart.
Yes.
Further. So that
Yes.
212 million XXX is going to be reduced by 300.
Yes.
300. Okay, and as far as some other funding sources we haven't seen just yet, there's like some questionable areas. I forget which one was. There was a significant increase to the line item in the governor's budget on the magnet schools. Do we have any type? I know it's very early yet. Do we have any type of projection of how that's going to affect us? Because it's a net positive of like almost, I think, double or something like that. I can't recall off the top of my head. We should be getting some more money from that.
Chair, through the chair, I cannot give you any. Some of these numbers are somewhat up in the air. So to be honest with you, I mean, my recommendation at this point, at this moment, is to stay focused and not try to take the money to the bank.
Right, absolutely. Well, that's going to go to my next forays about the advocacy, because we could advocate for somebody's funds. We're looking at 16 or something like that for the special education. Now, that $40 million is for 169 districts. Where I think we need to focus on advocacy efforts. If that is in fact the entire pot, that Bridgeport gets the proportional share of that $40 million according to the pupils of services. Not divided by 169 to give every district a little bit. We need to prioritize that, and there's a couple other little things like that. And yeah, we're in a tough spot. Like I said, I kind of lost my train of thought.
Through the chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I really do concur with you. The district will end up this year, current year 2025, for everybody who is out there. This district must end up with a balanced budget. Is attainable, is feasible, is doable. I don't want anybody to go out there and believe or think that we're not going to balance this 2025 budget. Yes, next year could be challenging, but there are things there are things in line that need to be done. But my only suggestion is for the board to really take an action that will not be a short-term savings or short-term action. An action that will last or sustain the district for years.
Good word, sustainable.
Such as a reliable increasing funding stream as one. Mr. Medina, I'm going to Mr. Medina first. You got something?
What are you saying? Go ahead. No, I was saying a good choice of words, because that's what we got to get to. We got to get to where we can be sustainable. That way, that's the only way we're going to be able to on anything or do better. Is once we sustain, once we get above water or on water level, then we can, breathe, let's say. And I think that's where we need to get the district going. And this is why all these cuts has been happening, to get back to those, ESSER days prior to ESSER. That way, be working on this. And I think we're doing a good job. And I think the state should be looking at us and saying, you know what? They were handed a bad hand, and they're turning around and they're making drastic moves that are being effective right now, that is getting to the bottom line, and they're moving in the right direction. And with a little bit of push from the state and even the feds, financially, we can get to a sustainable position and get these staff shortage maybe fixed by being able to breathe together. Because right now everybody's just, I believe, underwater still. But that's why I need these numbers to be matching. That when we go forward, we're not going to get bombarded with silly questions about the numbers don't match. Just you're saying one thing, but these numbers are showing a different thing. Why is this number matching what the budget was set for? And that's why I'm particular about these little things to make sure that, we're not going to be bombarded with silly questions, because they might think something's going on. God forbid.
Okay, through the chair, again, what I was referring to when I said sustainable taking actions, besides the state giving or helping the district needs to be, let me find a better choice of word. The district needs to take action internally by maximizing opportunities of schools in order to reduce costs, by efficiently maximizing their resources of buildings. If it's not cost effective, if it's too old, if it's of low capacity, these are options that need to be taken, or the board needs to explore and decide on in order to bring efficiency into the district, in addition to the state help.
Mr. Traber, and then Mr. Woodson.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on what Mr. Medina had been talking about, which was, if I recall, we had a $309 million budget last year that early on, Mr. Naquo said was adjusted up to a $315 million budget. It was $6 million over. So we need to show that.
That's fine. That's fine.
In making the adjustments that Mr. Medina requested, we need to reflect why, that change in the overall cost of that budget. And so as we do that, I'd like to see where that comes into play. That's also fine. For Monday's meeting. So I just wanted to make that little change in what we get on Monday. And then we are in the process, no matter how you say it, of going through a process, whether you are taking the extreme position advocated by a certain councilwoman last night, or you're taking the other position. We are in the process of going through. It's unfortunate that it's under these circumstances, but we are in the process of undertaking a facilities review based on a demographics survey of what we should be doing with our facilities and how we should be handling that in the healthiest and best way possible for our students and our budget, if you will, from Mr. Naquo's point of view. So we will be doing that over the next couple of months as we go through this too. That's it.
Mr. Woodson?
I think Mr. Enko is trying to be nice to us. and saying we need to stop wasting his time, wasting our time, wasting the taxpayers' time, wasting everybody's time talking about frivolous. This number is that. This number don't match this. Just let me say.
Do you have a budget question?
No, I don't. I have a question.
We're discussing the budget. That's not on the agenda. I don't want to violate
the budget. I have a comment about the budget. Can I finish what I was saying?
Yes, you may comment on the budget, sir.
Like I was saying, Mr. Inquo is trying to be nice to us. He doesn't want to be disrespectful. But if I was him, I would be disrespectful. Because this is a waste of time.
You are being disrespectful.
This is a waste of time. The state is going to take over because you guys are worrying about this number and that number. He said, get rid of all these old ass bills. Excuse my language. Get rid of all these old.
Thank you. Yes, back on track. Definitely, I don't disagree with anything Mr. Unquo said. Mr. Unquo, even if we were funded at the level of Greenwich, $26,000, I do believe we should be utilizing our tax dollars efficiently. 100% agree. No
It
matter how
doesn't
much money we
matter.
got, but
It doesn't matter. Save money.
You're not
It doesn't
recognizing
matter.
what Mr.
It doesn't
Wickham.
matter what they get in Greenwich. Save money in Bridgeport.
Anyway, those of us who feel it's a waste of time, I give all the staff a permission to sign off right now if you feel like we're wasting our time right here, right now. Okay, that being said, everybody's still here. Our next steps need to be advocacy. I suggest we advocate for this budget. I would like to have another meeting. I don't think this budget is ready for a prime time just yet for board approval. I believe we need to roll it out to our community. I would like to have a meeting next week. I know it's a little soon. If anybody feels it's a waste of time, feel free to stay home in bed. Don't show up. But I would like to invite the heads of all our major advocacy groups to come sit with us, see this presentation, and come up with some strategies for us to advocate for Bridgeport in front of the state.
Through chair. Can you still see my screen that I'm sharing? I don't know if I'm sharing.
No, it's just you, sir.
Okay.
You're not sharing anymore.
Okay. All right, that's fine. But again,
They can give you the right. They can give it
No,
to
no,
you.
no, no, that's okay.
Newport.
Okay, yeah, Tim, bring it up again, because from my experience, you see, my fear in putting numbers in a spreadsheet is that people assume it to be a done deal, or that is taking it, just is done, the budget is balanced. Again, these actions here, line number 145 through line number 165, have not been ratified by the board or approved by the board. Basically, what I'm trying to say, your deficit for 2026 still stands at 40 million.
Correct.
I just want to be clear.
Yes.
Okay. Because
and we'll make that painfully clear. And the reason being is we've got a very, very tight timeline, not through no fault of anybody here, but a very tight timeline with the biennial budget going through and decisions being made up on top, where we need to have conversations and we need to get everybody on the same page, knowing what we need, having a narrative directly from the horse's mouth so it's not twisted and turned, and what's at stake. Look at what's at stake there. I hope that's not a foregone conclusion, but it's a very big possibility of being a reality.
Okay.
But by the time the budget's settled, and if nothing changes, the people will come out when it's too late. They'll say, oh no, 26, don't take away these people, but we can't spend the money that's not there. So I think we need to get a state advocacy up like right now. I mean, it wasn't really planned on in the timeline, but I think it'll behoove us to have some real strong advocacy groups come here, have this discussion, talk about what we need, what they could do, get together some talking points so everybody's talking about the same thing. Bridgeport Public Schools, to avoid any cuts in 25, 26, needs an additional $40 million in any way, shape, or form. And if we fall short, if they get us an extra 5, those are people's lives and cuts that we saved and more services for our children. Even if it's only a $1 million benefit, every penny will count, every service cut. Madison, I see you, Mr. Benahan, you're behind this signal. So yeah, Mr. Benahan.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. People test me that they cannot hear nothing. They go in and out, and it's frozen for the public. Just to let you know.
Is it just me or is it everybody? Because
I can hear you, but the people outside, the public, the parents, and everybody, they say they test me. They go in and out, and it's frozen. So something's wrong with the communication. So I'll just let you know so you can let them know the IT, please.
I tested on our end, and it's fine over here. It could be their internet, but on my side, it's all good.
And
right,
I
thank
agree.
you.
Good in my side of town too.
My
so
side is
far.
good too, but that's why they tell me. All right, thank you,
Right,
Sam.
okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, go ahead.
I'm pretty much done. If, I'm pretty much done. Does anybody have anything else on this agenda item? Okay, then. Is there anything else on the agenda?
Yeah.
Cool.
Adjournment. I move to adjourn. If anybody else, I think.
This is
What are we
Jeff. I
thinking?
just wanted to let you know that it's actually not us that's having the issue. It's the what's called a CDN. It's the Content Delivery Network from YouTube. So I've been able to validate that depending on where the person is connecting from, that may cause the issue. If they quit the stream and open it again, they should be able to do it. But it is actually not us in this particular case.
Thank you, Mr.
Not
All
a
right,
problem.
thank you, Jeff.
I move
Thank you,
to
Jeff, for letting me
adjourn.
know. Thank you.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks,
Everybody, great
thanks,
meeting.
thanks,
Great
everyone.
night.
Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
gentlemen, ladies.
God bless you all.
Second vote, 70.